This is Plant-Based Briefing, 3 Ways Alternative Proteins Can Protect Our Forests, by Chelsea Montes de Oca at the Good Food Institute at gfi.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate articles on plant-based and vegan living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And I'm pleased to have permission from the Good Food Institute to share their content. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. 3 Ways Alternative Proteins Can Protect Our Forests, by Chelsea Montes de Oca at the Good Food Institute at gfi.org. Preserving biodiversity by diversifying our protein supply. Quote, "Between every 2 pine trees, there is a door leading to a new way of life," unquote. John Muir, Son of the Wilderness. Asking millions of people to embrace a new way of life is not easy. People who advocate for reducing meat consumption know that better than anyone. If changing behavior were easy, the decades-long pleas for people to eat less meat would have made a dent in meat consumption. Instead, we've witnessed the opposite. Meat consumption keeps going up and is expected to increase by at least 50% by 2050 from 2012 levels. The stakes for biodiversity around the world are high as this upward trajectory continues. 1/3 of all plant and animal life alive today is at risk of extinction by 2070. Forests hold much of that biodiversity. Over 80% of the world's land-based species call these ecosystems home. Agriculture is the biggest driver of forest loss, with upwards of 80% of deforestation worldwide happening to make room for crops and livestock. The shrinking Amazon rainforest, where agriculture's ever-growing pasture and cropland needs are the primary driver of deforestation, is one of the most striking examples of this. We're running out of room for food production, and the rising global demand for meat is stretching the production capacity of our land beyond sustainable limits. To protect our forests and the communities and wildlife that rely on them, we must reimagine our food system. If the majority of people find it difficult to change their diets, yet we can't continue with business as usual, what can we do? Diversifying our protein supply with plant-based, cultivated, and fermentation-enabled meat products that deliver the experience consumers know and love. Protein diversification is key if we want to curb deforestation and biodiversity loss while still meeting the world's growing demand for meat. Recent research underscores the potential impact of this shift. A 2021 study published in Nature found that replacing just 20% of beef with microbial proteins from fermentation could cut deforestation in half by 2050. Transitioning toward alternative proteins is a powerful conversation strategy that addresses 3 leading stressors to biodiversity: agricultural-driven land use change, greenhouse gas emissions, and excessive water use. More protein, less cropland. Today, half of our world's habitable land is used for agriculture. Under a business-as-usual scenario, agricultural land, primarily pastures and feed crops, is projected to expand by more than 600 million hectares by 2050, an area twice the size of India. The World Resources Institute refers to this as the global land squeeze, leading to increased competition over finite land and water, greater emissions, and unprecedented biodiversity loss. Diversifying the global protein supply could reduce the amount of land needed to feed the human population by as much as 75%, freeing up 3 billion hectares of land around the world, the equivalent area of North America and Brazil combined, for ecological restoration, renewable energy production, and regenerative agriculture. Cultivated meat requires up to 90% less land than conventional beef, and plant-based meat uses up to 93% less land. The chart shown below demonstrates that switching from conventional meat to plant-based meat reduces land use by up to 96% for beef, 41% for pork and chicken, and switching from conventional meat to cultivated meat produced with renewable energy reduces land use by up to 94% for beef, 70% for pork, and 61% for chicken. In the United States, more than 50% of land supports animal agriculture. This analysis, linked here by GFI and Highland Economics, shows that with a 50% shift toward alternative proteins, 47.3 million acres of U.S. cropland currently used for domestic animal protein consumption could be transitioned to other land uses, such as land restoration to help stabilize climate change and reduce biodiversity loss. More protein, less greenhouse gas emissions. The year we just wrapped, 2024, was the hottest ever recorded in human history. To meet global climate targets, the world has just over 2 decades to get to net zero. Though 145 countries pledged to halt and reverse forest loss by 2030, just 5 years from now, deforestation remains a global problem. Forests play a crucial role in the global carbon cycle by acting as carbon sinks, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Burning trees and clearing vegetation to turn forests into agricultural land releases the carbon dioxide previously stored in the plant matter. Because of this, researchers have found that the Amazon now emits more CO2 than it captures. Restoring these forested ecosystems is an enormous carbon sequestration opportunity. In addition to deforestation, food and agriculture also result in significant carbon emissions, 1/3 of all global emissions to be exact. Animal agriculture alone, including the crops and pastures to feed those animals, accounts for between 12 and 20% of all emissions. The World Bank's Recipe for a Living Planet report, which examines 26 of the most promising emission mitigation interventions across the agriculture, forests, and food sectors, ranks alternative proteins second for climate mitigation potential, at 6 times the equivalent of eliminating air travel worldwide and 9 times more impactful than the second most promising livestock-based intervention, methane-reducing ruminant feed. More protein, less water required. Water is a finite, indispensable resource that gives way to life as we know it on this planet. It has immense, multidimensional value to individuals and communities around the world. And yet, precious as it is, our agricultural system often takes water for granted. In fact, agriculture is the largest user of fresh water, accounting for 70% of withdrawals globally, contributing to rapidly depleting water resources. Livestock farming alone uses 16% of the world's fresh water. Only 0.003% of Earth's water is available freshwater, and over 2 billion people currently live in countries with inadequate water supply. Water scarcity is projected to worsen in the coming decades, especially in drought-susceptible areas like the American West, including the Colorado River, for which more than 3/4 of water withdrawals are related to agriculture. Alternative proteins are water efficient and can address water scarcity. By only requiring the crops that end up in the final product, plant-based meat production cuts out feed crops, which are the primary water requirement in conventional meat production. As water becomes a limited resource, alternative proteins offer a water scarcity solution. Producing plant-based meat, for example, uses 93 to 96% less water than producing the same amount of beef, chicken, or pork. You can't plant a tree and expect it to grow overnight. Embracing alternative proteins requires us to see the forest for the trees, recognizing the food system's impact on our planet, and investing in an emerging industry that, while still developing, has enormous potential. Thousands of innovators working to reimagine our protein supply are planting seeds that will grow into game-changing products and innovative production methods that deliver the foods we love in ways that are better for the planet. They're tackling the biggest challenges facing their young field and achieving breakthroughs that address taste and cost, diversify ingredients, optimize nutrition, scale sustainably, and meet more consumer needs. Meat made from plants or cultivated from cells can be part of a broader suite of food system interventions that help protect and conserve forests, wetlands, grasslands, and other critical ecosystems. Given the expected global increase in meat consumption over the next 25 years, we'll need additional sustainable ways to meet that demand, and with the right level of support, alt proteins can be exactly that. Reimagining our protein supply is a daunting task. Those of us who work at GFI know that well. And yes, it will be challenging. But most world-changing endeavors are difficult. They're almost always worth it. As environmental thought leader David Attenborough once said, "The final chapter is ours to write. We know what we need to do. What happens next is up to us." You just listened to 3 Ways Alternative Proteins Can Protect Our Forests by Chelsea Montes de Oca at the Good Food Institute at gfi.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And I will link a few related episodes in the show notes in case you're interested. 962, One Industry's Waste Can Be the Alternative Protein Industry's Want. 283, alt proteins can help us achieve an equitable global water system. Here's how. 160, the climate and biodiversity crises are inextricably interconnected. Their solutions can be too. And 471, deforestation and reforestation. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.